The private hospital floor looked less like a place of healing and more like a guarded vault. Polished marble reflected the cold white lights, and the air smelled faintly of antiseptic and money. Every door required a code. Every hallway echoed with restrained urgency. This entire wing had been reserved for one patient, an infant who weighed less than a sack of flour and yet carried the unbearable weight of his father's fortune and fear. Behind a thick glass wall, surrounded by softly blinking machines, lay the millionaire's newborn son. His skin was pale, almost translucent, stretched delicately over tiny bones. Thin wires trailed from his chest and head, mapping a fragile life onto glowing screens. His breaths came shallow and uneven, as if each one required negotiation with the world. The father stood motionless, his reflection fractured in the glass. He had built an empire from nothing, clawed his way up from obscurity with ruthless discipline and unmatched ambition. Boardrooms feared his silence. Governments returned his calls. But now, none of that mattered. He would have traded every skyscraper bearing his name for one strong cry from the child before him. 18 doctors had already passed through this room. They came in tailored coats and hurried footsteps, carrying tablets heavy with scans and test results. Some spoke with confidence at first, others with cautious humility, but all of them eventually arrived at the same place. They used phrases that sounded gentle but felt brutal. "We've never seen this before. The condition is extremely rare. The response to treatment is minimal." Each explanation was followed by a pause long enough to hold hope, then by a quiet shake of the head. Specialists flew in overnight from abroad. The best neonatal neurologist in Europe. A renowned geneticist from Tokyo. A cardiac expert whose waiting list stretched for years. They studied the baby like a puzzle missing too many pieces, arguing softly over charts while the machines continued their tireless watch. Nothing worked. Outside the room, nurses whispered. Inside, the millionaire's wife sat slumped in a chair, her face hollow, her body still weak from childbirth. She hadn't cried in hours. Tears required energy she no longer had. She stared at the baby as if afraid that blinking too long might cause him to vanish. And always, just a step behind the chaos, stood Anna. She wasn't meant to be there. Her presence barely registered among the white coats and sharp suits. She had been hired 2 weeks earlier through an agency that specialized in discreet domestic help. Her resume was thin. No formal training beyond basic childcare. No glowing references from powerful families. She came cheap, and she asked for nothing extra. Anna wore the same gray sweater she'd owned for years, its cuffs frayed, its fabric softened by too many washings. Her dark hair was tied back simply. Her eyes, however, missed nothing. She watched the baby when no one else truly did. Doctors looked at numbers. Parents looked at fear. Anna looked at the child himself. She noticed how his tiny fists clenched tightly whenever a new voice entered the room. How his heart rate spiked when gloved hands adjusted him, then slowly settled when the room grew quiet again. She noticed that his breathing, ragged and strained, smoothed ever so slightly when she stood close, humming under her breath without realizing she was doing it. She had been told not to interfere. Observe, assist, don't speak unless spoken to. Anna obeyed, mostly. But something deep inside her chest twisted tighter with each passing hour. This wasn't just sickness. She had seen sickness before. In her village, illness didn't wear white coats or come with machines. It came suddenly, mercilessly, and often left graves behind. She knew the look of pain. This baby's face held something else. Fear. The night deepened. The lights dimmed slightly to simulate rest, though no one truly slept. A senior doctor explained the next procedure to the parents in a low, controlled voice. It involved another intervention, another risk, another small chance. The mother nodded weakly. The father stared at the floor, jaw clenched. Anna felt her heart pound in her ears. She stepped forward before she could stop herself. "Please," she said quietly. The word barely seemed loud enough to exist in the room, yet it cut through the murmurs like a blade. Every head turned. The doctor frowned, irritation flashing across his face. "This is not appropriate," he said sharply. "We are discussing medical decisions." Anna's hands trembled, but she didn't step back. Her eyes stayed fixed on the baby. "Please don't do this," she repeated. "Not yet." Security shifted closer to the door. The millionaire turned toward her slowly, disbelief etched into his exhausted face. "Who are you?" he demanded. "Why are you speaking?" "I'm the nanny," Anna said simply. "I take care of him at night." The doctor scoffed. "With all due respect, you are not qualified to." "He is not sick the way you think," Anna interrupted, surprising even herself. Her voice shook, but it didn't break. "His body is reacting to fear. He is overwhelmed. Too many hands. Too many strangers. He does not feel safe. A heavy silence fell. The millionaire laughed once, harsh and hollow. 18 specialists are wrong, but you're right. He snapped. Do you hear yourself? Anna lowered her gaze briefly, then looked up again. I hear his breathing, she said. I see his hands. He is fighting to protect himself. That's enough, the doctor said. Escort her out. Security took a step forward. Anna's chest burned. If she left now, she knew with a certainty that terrified her, that this child would continue to suffer. Maybe die. She thought of nights long ago, of a dirt floor room, of a baby gasping in the dark. Of promises whispered into tiny ears. Before anyone could stop her, she reached for the nearest monitor. Her fingers closed around the wire. And she pulled. The moment the wire came free, the room erupted. A sharp, piercing alarm tore through the sterile air, red lights flashing like accusations. Nurses shouted. A doctor lunged forward, his face draining of color. What have you done? He yelled, already reaching for the controls. But Anna was faster than anyone expected. She slid her arms beneath the baby with a tenderness born of instinct, not instruction, and lifted him from the incubator. Gasps rippled through the room. No one had ever touched the child without gloves, without permission, without protocol. And yet there she was, a poor nanny in a worn sweater, cradling the most protected life in the building. Stop her! Someone shouted. The millionaire surged forward, panic exploding into rage. Put my son down. His voice cracked, raw with terror. You'll kill him. Anna sank slowly to the floor, crossing her legs as if the chaos around her did not exist. She pressed the baby against her chest, skin to skin, his tiny cheek resting over her heart. Her hands trembled violently, but her hold was steady. She bowed her head and closed her eyes. Then she began to sing. Not softly, not carefully. She sang the way people sing when there is nothing left to lose. Her voice filled the room, low, uneven, textured with years of dust and sorrow and endurance. The words were in a language no one recognized, old syllables that curved and repeated, like waves returning again and again to the shore. For a heartbeat, the alarms continued screaming. Then the baby's cry, sharp and thin, wavered. One nurse stared at the monitor. Wait, his heart rate. The alarms slowed, their frantic rhythm stretching, spacing out. The flashing lights softened. A doctor froze mid-step, eyes locked on the screen as the numbers shifted, subtly at first, then unmistakably. The baby's breathing changed. It was still fragile, still shallow, but it was no longer panicked. His chest rose and fell in a steadier pattern, sinking gradually with the rise and fall of Anna's own breath. His clenched fists loosened. One tiny hand fisted into the fabric of her sweater, as if anchoring himself to her. The room fell into stunned silence. What is happening? Someone whispered. Anna kept singing, tears streaming down her face now. Each note carried memory. She rocked gently, her body becoming the rhythm the baby could not find on his own. When my daughter was born, she said between verses, her voice breaking but never stopping, she breathed like this. Fast. Frightened. The doctors told me she would not survive the night. The millionaire stood frozen, his knees trembling, his world tilting violently off balance. I had no machines, Anna continued. No medicine. No money. Just my body. My voice. My heartbeat. She pressed her lips to the baby's hair. I told her she was safe. That she was not alone. I reminded her where she came from. A doctor stepped closer, his earlier anger replaced by awe. This is kangaroo care, he murmured, half to himself. But at this level, this response. The monitor beeped again, this time gently, almost politely. Oxygen levels climbed. Heart rhythm stabilized. The baby let out a soft sound, not a cry, but something closer to a sigh. The millionaire dropped to his knees. His expensive shoes hit the floor without sound. His hands shook as he covered his face, shoulders collapsing inward as years of control disintegrated in seconds. He had signed billion-dollar deals without flinching, buried enemies with signatures, silenced rooms with a glance. But now, watching his son cling to a woman he had barely noticed, he wept openly. I didn't know, he whispered. I didn't know what he needed. Anna looked up at him, her eyes red but kind. Neither did I, she said softly. Until I listened. Doctors gathered around, forgotten clipboards hanging uselessly at their sides. They weren't intervening anymore. They were witnessing. Data scrolled across screens, rewriting their certainty line by line. What weeks of invasive treatment could not achieve, minutes of human connection had begun to restore. After a long while, the baby fell into a deep, peaceful sleep. Anna stopped singing, but she did not move. The room remained still, as if afraid that sound itself might undo the fragile miracle. Finally, a nurse cleared her throat. We should return him to the incubator, she said gently. Anna nodded. Carefully, reverently, she placed the baby back inside. This time, no alarms screamed. No numbers spiked. The baby slept on, breathing evenly, his face relaxed in a way no one had seen before. The head doctor straightened slowly. We were treating an illness, he said quietly. But what he needed was regulation. Safety. Co-regulation. The millionaire rose unsteadily to his feet. He walked to Anna and stopped in front of her. For a moment, he said nothing. Then he bowed his head. Why didn't you say anything sooner? He asked, his voice hoarse. Anna hesitated. I didn't think anyone would listen. He nodded, swallowing hard. You saved my son. In the days that followed, the baby continued to improve. Procedures were cancelled. The room grew quieter. Doctors redesigned the care plan entirely, incorporating what they now called human-centered healing. Skin-to-skin contact became mandatory. Parents were encouraged to sing, to touch, to be present, not just observe. The press would later credit innovation, elite medicine, cutting-edge research, but the millionaire knew better. He funded a new wing of the hospital, not filled with machines, but with warmth. Rooms designed for closeness, for voices, for heartbeats, and Anna, he offered her money she could never have imagined. She declined most of it. She stayed instead, no longer as the poor nanny, but as family, as someone whose knowledge had never come from textbooks, but from love sharpened by loss. Because sometimes, when science reaches its limits, it is the simplest human act, holding, singing, being, that teaches life how to stay.